Our closing session this afternoon brings us back to the fundamental importance of ecumenical action at local level in the lives of churches working together. Those of you who were able to visit the Ecumenical Relations Act's Heart and Soul tent in May this year will have had the opportunity to see a display about the East Kilbride Community Integration Project. But good as that display was, it's the people who have the passion and the commitment and the vision to have made that work who really bring the story to life. And I'm really pleased that today we have John Barry and we have our own vice-convener, Kevin Mackenzie, who are the people with the passion and the vision and the commitment and have made this story a success and are going to tell us about it now.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me all right? I came hotfoot after lunch from East Kilbride, and a couple of thoughts. When I was a wee boy in Glasgow, is that better?
It's kind of sad.
Yeah. When I was a wee boy in Glasgow, I used to travel, in the 50s, I used to travel on a tram, an electric tram with a clippy. And I travelled on a tram with a clippy, an electric tram with a clippy today. And it's every bit as cold in Edinburgh as it is in East Kilbride, but you've got more tourists. My name is John Barry. I'm what's known in the west of Scotland as a cradle Catholic, comfortable in my own faith and my own tradition, and equally comfortable with other people's traditions. I'm a Glaswegian, but for the past 30 years I've lived in East Kilbride, and I've been a member of the parish of Our Lady of Lourdes, which is the largest parish in the Diocese of Motherwell. In 2009, Father Nolan, now Bishop Nolan of Galloway, who was the parish priest of Our Lady of Lourdes, received an invitation from Reverend Mackenzie and Reverend Dr. McPake, Reverend Mackenzie of Westwood Parish Church and Dr. McPake of Morsnewk Parish Church, to meet. It appeared that the Church of Scotland Parish Development Fund had some money to be used for anti-sectarian initiatives, projects. I had recently retired from 30 years of teaching and 12 plus years of coaching boys' clubs in East Kilbride in football. The boys' club where I spent most of my time, no party colours were allowed. The boys came from what was seen as both sides of the traditional divide. And at the end of training, inevitably they would come to me and say, "Can we have 10 minutes, old firm, Mr. Barry?" And thereupon they would kick lumps out of one another for 10 minutes and then make their way home the best of friends. I learned early in my teaching career and in other experiences with the boys that territorial identity is equally as important, if not more important, than football or religious allegiance. So Father Nolan said to me, "Would you like to come along to the meeting, John?" And I went along to a meeting. We chatted, we drank tea, and we looked at possible ways of going forward with some of the funding which would be made available to us. We decided we didn't like the term anti-sectarian, so Dr. McPake, I think it was, came up with the term Community Integration Project. And we've used that ever since. We wanted to be a steering group for action, not a talking shop. We wanted things to happen. And so, probably at my instigation, we remained unconstituted. And therefore, I had sat, like many of you, on constituted committees for many, many years where a lot of discussion took place, but not a lot happened. And we wanted things to happen. At that first meeting, we agreed some aims. And over the years, over the decades since, our aims have probably evolved along those lines. To go beyond tolerance towards understanding, to inform about and build on the shared heritage and commonality of the Church of Scotland and the Roman Catholic Church, to provide real joint worship for adults, to provide joint social occasions, to provide real opportunities for our primary school children to learn about the traditions, to touch the lives of those who do not attend church through the children and through our witness, and to meet regularly. And we've done that over the years. The first parishes, Mossnewt Parish, Our Lady of Lourdes Parish and Westwood Parish, and the associated primary schools. The first schools were Canberra Primary, Mossnewt Primary, and Our Lady of Lourdes Primary, of course. And then one of the very proactive members of a school was promoted and became the head teacher of East Milton, and she asked if they could join. She saw the value of what we did and asked if she could join. And latterly, we've added 2 primary schools at the farther end of the area, Heatherenow Primary and St. Louise Primary. I recently calculated for somebody that about 1,000 school children so far have participated in our events. So the events for adults, first few years we had an annual Songs of Praise. Always in January at Christian Unity Week, alternating between Our Lady of Lourdes Church and Westwood Parish Church. One of the highlights of those early Songs of Praise was that the Mossnewt Parish Choir sang the only Latin hymn. With irony, certain factors, though, impacted on our Songs of Praise or our annual service. One was that the Christian Unity Week always being in January, the weather is not very clement in East Kilbride in January. So we have decided over the years to take possession of our events, and we hold them when it suits the community, when it suits us and the community. And Dr. McPake was working with the working party at that time, I think, on a rite of renewal of baptismal vows acceptable to the Catholic Church and the Church of Scotland. So what we've done recently is we alternated between Songs of Praise one year and renewal of baptismal vows the next, at a time that suited us, and actually we've combined them latterly into a single service at a time that suits us. September was this year. When we had funding, which I'll return to, we arranged a day where the adults, this was born out of teachers who were participating in the children's visits to Glasgow Reformed Cathedral and St Andrew's Catholic Cathedral. And the teachers said, you should be doing this with adults, not just with school children. And we arranged that. We had funding, which, as I say, I'll return to, and because bus costs can be high. But we took about between 80 and 100 adult parishioners to Glasgow Cathedral and to St Andrew's Catholic Cathedral, and then we had a late lunch and a conference, question and answer session in Christ the King Parish Hall. Again, with funding, we were able to arrange pilgrimages to Inchcolm Abbey and Dryborough Abbey. Again, you'll see the cost implications of going to Inchcolm. As soon as you have to take a ferry, then the costs become greater. We tried St Andrew's Night Socials for a few years at the Feast of St Andrew. Again, we chose 2 years when the winter came early in East Kilbride, and 40 or 50 hardy souls still made it. So one of the years there was no public transport. The town had closed down, it was shut off. But they ploughed their way through the snow, and we had good evenings. Maybe we'll return to that sometime. We have an annual cemetery service commemorating our dead, our family's dead. And I just added this during the week, the hustings. We felt it was appropriate, over the years we felt it was appropriate that if there where a general election or council elections or the independence referendum and the Brexit referendum, we should offer the opportunity of a hustings with the candidates to our parishioners, people who would not perhaps attend a hustings which was dominated by political activists. And they became very, very successful, very well attended. And eventually we had to ticket the events. And the candidates seemed to see our hustings in the Westwood, hosted in Kevin's church, the Westwood Parish Church, and chaired by whoever was the parish priest. And the candidates seemed to like it and see it as the hustings of East Kilbride. The events for the school children. Every year we take the school children, January, February, to the cathedrals. We go firstly to Glasgow Reformed Cathedral, and due to the kindness of the Museum of Religious Life there, we're given free accommodation for lunch for the children. And then we originally went to St Andrew's Catholic Cathedral, but latterly we've been going to, went to Motherwell Cathedral, as the parish priest felt that they should be going to visit their own diocese cathedral. In the May of the year, the same children, they tend to be primary 6, primary 7 children. That's the decision of the school. But the same children will visit Our Lady of Lourdes and Westwood Parish Church. And there they'll have tours, as they have in the cathedrals, activities which they participate in. Anything we're doing is obviously to underpin the curricular work which the teachers are doing with the children. And we sometimes give them some activities to use as backup in the classroom. And again, with funding, a few years ago we were able to organise a pilgrimage for the school children. We took about 100 school children to Inchcolm Abbey, where Kevin ran ahead and donned a black cloak like the canons, the Augustinian canons who would have been there originally, and came down to meet the children off the boat. Ooh, that's Reverend Mackenzie. Funding. We had a couple of £1,000 from the Church of Scotland Parish Development Fund at the very start. We applied for government funding from Action on Sectarianism, small grants, and we received several £1,000s from them. We applied for that and got it on a couple of occasions. But Kevin and I had to attend evaluation events. When you get money from the government, then you have to attend an evaluation event. One was in Glasgow, one was in Edinburgh, and account for what you've done. Quite a humbling experience, those events, as we met with projects from all around the country, some of them dealing with much more difficult situations than ours. But at the second event, Dynamic Earth in Edinburgh, the minister came through and told us no more funding. So recently we applied to Sense Over Sectarianism, Glasgow-based, and we've been given a small grant which will help to fund the buses for the school children. And of course, in typical church tradition, we can take a collection at events, a retiring collection. So more importantly, it's a bit like any book, isn't it? The first page is important, how we started, and the last page is important, where we are now. So the current annual calendar: cathedral visits for the schools, January and February; church visits for schools in May; songs of praise, baptismal vows event, September; an annual cemetery service, the first Sunday in June. And we've done that for several years now. It's become a tradition. And again, you hope that regardless of whether I'm still there or the minister's incumbent and the parish priest incumbent, if they move on, that these things will continue. And we try to self-fund a pilgrimage for parishioners. And of course, we're now moving to open the invitation to other congregations, other local congregations. I'd like to stress two things in concluding, that these events didn't take place 10 years ago. Things would have taken place on an ad hoc basis, because it's a community and the people know one another, and the things would happen in the different parishes. But these events did not take place. And secondly, yes, funding makes certain things possible, but most of our events can take place without funding. Not long after Bishop Nolan took up his post in Ayr, he contacted me and he said that he'd been approached by primary teachers, 2 primary heads in an Ayrshire village, which was experiencing difficulties, sectarian difficulties. And he wondered if I could maybe put them in touch with some source of funding. There was no funding, Kevin and I had been told, no more government funding. But I contacted the head teachers and I told them, no, go and speak to the parish priests, go and speak to the minister, speak to your teachers, make things happen. Make things happen yourself. It's the will to make these things happen which makes them happen, isn't it? In the thinking about what I caught in the afternoon there, listening to Charlotte and the discussions, I like Jane Austen, and Jane Austen's wonderful Lizzie Bennet and her enigmatic Darcy would surely encourage us not to let our often ill-informed pride and prejudice prevent us from seeing and achieving the great joy of being different but being together. Thank you very much.